I was standing in my driveway at 6 in the morning, staring at the empty concrete pad where my backup generator's battery bank used to be, when I realized that my life in Pleasant Valley Estates was about to become a living nightmare. The cold January wind whipped across my face as I crouched down, examining the cut cables and missing bolts. My whole body went numb, and it wasn't from the Michigan winter. Someone had physically removed the entire battery backup system from my generator setup during the night. This wasn't some random theft. The cuts were too clean, too professional. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. My name is Kyle Foster, and I had lived in this subdivision outside Grand Rapids for 3 years. I bought the house specifically because the neighborhood seemed quiet and well-maintained. The HOA fees were steep at $400 a month, but I figured it was worth it for the peace of mind. That morning, I learned just how wrong I could be. I pulled out my phone and called the police first. The dispatcher said they would send someone out within the hour. Then I called my generator installation company, Midwest Power Solutions. The technician who answered sounded half asleep until I explained what happened. "Wait, you're saying someone cut the cables and removed the entire battery bank?" he asked. "That's exactly what I'm saying. The whole thing is gone. Just the main generator unit is left. Sir, that's a $40,000 battery system. And if those cables were cut improperly, you could have serious electrical damage to the main unit. Don't touch anything. I'll have someone out there by 9. I hung up and went back inside. My wife, Jennifer, was making coffee in the kitchen. She looked at me with concern when she saw my face. "What's wrong? The battery backup for the generator is gone. Someone took it." "What do you mean took it?" "I mean it's not there anymore. Someone physically removed it from the pad." She set down her coffee mug. "That's insane. Who would do that?" I had a pretty good idea who was behind it, even if they hadn't done it themselves. 3 weeks earlier, I had received a violation notice from the HOA. The letter, signed by the association president, Brenda Patterson, stated that my backup generator installation violated the community covenants because it was visible from the street and had not been approved by the Architectural Review Committee. The problem was, I had submitted the plans for approval 8 months before installation. I had copies of the application, the architectural drawings, and even a receipt showing the $50 application fee. When I didn't hear back after 60 days, which according to the HOA bylaws meant automatic approval, I went ahead with the installation. The generator was essential. I worked from home as a software consultant for medical equipment companies. My clients included hospitals and clinics that needed 24/7 support. A power outage could mean life support systems going down, and I needed to be available. The generator and battery backup system ensured I would never lose power, even during Michigan's harsh winter storms. The police arrived at 7:30. Officer Martinez was professional, but didn't seem particularly optimistic about recovering the stolen equipment. "Without security cameras, it's going to be tough," he said, taking photos of the cut cables. "You said this is worth $40,000. The battery bank alone, yes. The whole system with the generator was close to $70,000. He whistled low. "That's grand theft. We'll file a report and check with local scrap yards and pawn shops, but honestly, equipment like this usually gets sold out of state or broken down for parts." "I think my HOA might be involved," I said. Officer Martinez looked up from his notepad. "Your homeowners association. Why would they steal your generator battery?" I explained about the violation notice and the approval process. He wrote everything down but didn't seem convinced. "That's a pretty serious accusation. Do you have any proof they were involved?" "Not yet, but I'm going to find out." After the officer left, I went to my office and pulled out all my HOA documentation. The violation notice was dated December 15th. I had responded in writing on December 18th, providing copies of my original application and proof of payment. I had sent it certified mail to make sure they received it. According to the tracking information, Brenda Patterson had signed for it on December 20th. I had received no response. The technician from Midwest Power Solutions arrived at 9 sharp. His name was Tom, and he had been the one to install the system originally. When he saw the damage, his face went pale. "Oh no. Oh, this is bad. How bad?" Tom knelt down and examined the severed cables more closely. These weren't cut by someone who knew what they were doing. Look at this. They used bolt cutters on live cables. You're lucky the whole system didn't arc and catch fire. My stomach dropped. What does this mean for the generator? I need to test everything, but there's a good chance the control system is fried. Even if it's not, removing the battery bank during winter operation voids your warranty completely. Wait, what? Tom stood up and brushed off his knees. Your warranty specifically states that the integrated battery system cannot be disconnected during months when the unit might operate under load. It's in the documentation. Winter storms mean potential power outages, which means the system is considered operational. Disconnecting the batteries creates a feedback loop that can damage the inverter and control boards. So you're saying whoever took this voided my warranty? That's exactly what I'm saying. And replacement parts for a system this size, out of warranty, could run you another $20,000 to $30,000. Maybe more, depending on what's damaged. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. This was getting worse by the minute. Tom spent the next hour running diagnostics. The news wasn't good. The control board showed signs of electrical stress, and 2 of the inverter modules were completely dead. He estimated repairs at $28,000, and that was assuming they could even get the parts. The generator was a specialized model designed for whole home backup with battery storage, and some components had 6-month lead times. What am I supposed to do? I asked. File an insurance claim. Document everything. And seriously, if you think your HOA did this, you need to get a lawyer. This is criminal. After Tom left, I sat in my home office staring at the estimate. $70,000 worth of damage. My insurance had a $5,000 deductible, and I wasn't even sure if they would cover intentional destruction. I needed answers, and I was going to get them. I drove to Brenda Patterson's house at 2 that afternoon. She lived in the largest home in the subdivision, a sprawling colonial with perfect landscaping and a 3-car garage. I rang the doorbell and waited. Brenda answered after a minute. She was in her mid-50s, with short blonde hair and the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was wearing yoga pants and a fleece pullover, holding a glass of white wine even though it wasn't even 2:30 in the afternoon. "Kyle, what a surprise. What can I do for you?" "My generator battery bank was stolen last night. Someone cut the cables and removed $40,000 worth of equipment from my property." Her expression didn't change. "Oh my, that's terrible. Have you called the police?" "I have. They were out this morning." Funny thing though, it happened right after I received that violation notice from the HOA. Now something flickered in her eyes. "I'm not sure what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. I submitted my application for that generator 8 months before installation. I never heard back, which means it was automatically approved per the bylaws. Then suddenly, you send me a violation notice. The Architectural Review Committee never received your application. I have the receipt. And the certified mail tracking showing you personally received my response 3 weeks ago. You've been ignoring it. Brenda's smile vanished. I don't appreciate your tone. The HOA has rules for a reason. Your generator is an eyesore and it violates the community standards. The law says you can't prohibit backup generators, and mine is behind a decorative enclosure that matches my house. It's barely visible. We'll let the HOA attorney decide that. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have things to do. She started to close the door, but I put my hand against it. If I find out the HOA was involved in vandalizing my property, I will sue you personally, and I will press criminal charges. $70,000 in damages, Brenda. That's felony territory. Get your hand off my door before I call the police. I removed my hand and she slammed the door. As I walked back to my truck, I noticed her watching me through the front window. She was on her phone, talking animatedly to someone. This was far from over. That evening, I contacted a lawyer. His name was Robert Chen, and he specialized in HOA disputes. I had found him through an online search, and his reviews were excellent. We set up a consultation for the next morning. I also filed a comprehensive insurance claim, including Tom's damage assessment, the police report, and photos of everything. The insurance adjuster said it would take a few days to process, but the claim looked valid. Jennifer was worried. We had a daughter, Emma, who was in 5th grade and she loved this neighborhood. Her best friend lived 2 houses down. The thought of getting into a legal battle with the HOA was stressing both of us out. Maybe we should just let it go, Jennifer said that night over dinner. We can file the insurance claim, get it fixed, and move on. Someone destroyed our property, I said. That's not something you just let go. But what if it wasn't the HOA? What if it was just random thieves? Then why was the cut so precise? Why did they only take the batteries and not the main generator unit? That's worth more money and easier to move. This was targeted, Jen. Someone wanted to cause maximum damage to the system specifically. She didn't have an answer for that. The next morning, I met with Robert Chen at his office in downtown Grand Rapids. He was in his early 40s, sharply dressed, and got right to business. "Tell me everything," he said. I walked him through the entire timeline. The application submission, the installation, the violation notice, my response, and finally the theft. He took notes and asked specific questions about dates and documentation. "You have copies of all this?" he asked. "Everything." Application, receipt, certified mail tracking photos, the police report, and the mechanic's assessment. Good. That's very good. And you're certain the mechanic confirmed that removing the battery during winter voids the warranty? He was explicit about it. It's in the equipment documentation. The system is designed to operate as an integrated unit, and disconnecting components during operational months creates electrical feedback that damages other components. Robert leaned back in his chair. "Okay, here's what we're dealing with. First, Michigan law prohibits HOAs from banning backup generators. There's specific legislation that went into effect in 2019 after several high-profile cases where people with medical equipment were being denied the ability to install emergency power. I know. That's why I felt safe installing it. Right. Second, your HOA's own bylaws state that failure to respond to an architectural application within 60 days constitutes automatic approval. You have proof of submission and proof that they received your follow-up. That's going to work in your favor. What about the theft? That's trickier. Unless you have direct evidence linking the HOA to the theft, it's going to be hard to prove. But we can pursue this from multiple angles. We can sue for harassment, for violation of state law regarding generators, and for failure to follow their own bylaws. If we can establish a pattern of harassment, and if we can show they had motive to vandalize your property, we might be able to add that to the suit. What do I need to do? Document everything. Every interaction with the HOA, every email, every letter, every conversation. If Brenda Patterson so much as looks at you funny, write it down with a date and time. We're going to build a case that shows the HOA was targeting you. I left the lawyer's office feeling slightly better. At least I had a plan. I spent the rest of the day working and trying to catch up on projects I had fallen behind on due to all the chaos. 2 days later, I received another letter from the HOA. This one was even more aggressive. It stated that I had 15 days to remove the generator entirely or face daily fines of $100. It also stated that the HOA was placing a lien on my property for unpaid fines related to the violation, totaling $3,000. I immediately scanned the letter and emailed it to Robert Chen. He called me within an hour. "They're escalating," he said. "This is actually good for us. They're getting desperate and making mistakes. You don't owe them any fines because the installation was legal and approved. And they can't place a lien without going through proper notification procedures. This letter is probably not legally valid. What should I do? Nothing. Don't respond. Let them make their next move. They're building our case for us." That same afternoon, my doorbell rang. It was a process server with a lawsuit from the HOA. They were suing me for violation of community covenants and seeking an injunction to force removal of the generator, plus attorney fees and costs. I called Robert immediately. "They just served me with a lawsuit." "Yeah, I figured they might." "Don't worry. This is going to backfire on them spectacularly. We'll file a counterclaim for harassment, violation of state law, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. And we're going to add the theft and property damage once we can establish their connection to it." "How do we do that?" "Leave that to me. I'm going to hire a private investigator. If the HOA hired someone to remove that battery, there's going to be a paper trail. Payments, communications, something. We'll find it." Over the next week, things got worse before they got better. My insurance company initially denied the claim, stating that they needed more evidence that the theft wasn't somehow my fault or a result of improper installation. I had to get Tom to write a detailed letter explaining that the installation was to code and that the theft was clearly intentional vandalism. The private investigator, a former cop named Sarah Mitchell, started digging into the HOA's finances and communications. Michigan has pretty strong HOA transparency laws, which meant that as a homeowner, I had the right to inspect certain HOA records. Robert filed a formal request for all financial records, meeting minutes, and email communications related to my property for the past year. Brenda fought it initially, but Robert threatened to get a court order and she backed down. We received a box of documents 2 weeks later. Sarah and Robert spent days going through everything, and then they found it. There was an email chain between Brenda and 2 other board members, Sharon Winters and Douglas Hamilton. The email started right after I installed the generator. Sharon had written, "We need to do something about Foster's generator. It sets a bad precedent. Next thing you know, everyone will want one." Brenda had responded, "I'll send him a violation notice. We never approved this." Douglas had added, "Check the records. If he submitted an application, we need to show it was denied." There was a gap of a few days, then Brenda wrote, "I can't find an application. He must not have submitted one." But the smoking gun came 3 weeks later, right around the time my battery bank was stolen. There was an email from Brenda to a name I didn't recognize. "Talk to Randy. He can take care of the problem this week. Cash only, no records." Robert called me immediately. "We've got them. This email directly implicates Brenda in arranging for your property to be vandalized." "Who's Randy?" "That's what Sarah is finding out right now." Sarah Mitchell was good at her job. Within 48 hours, she had identified Randy as Randy Morrison, a handyman who did occasional work for the HOA. He had a criminal record including theft and vandalism charges from 15 years earlier. Sarah tracked him down at a job site and, posing as a potential client, struck up a conversation. Randy was not a smart criminal. When Sarah casually mentioned she had a neighbor with a generator she wanted to get rid of, Randy actually bragged about a job he had done recently. "Yeah, I just did something like that. Easy money. Lady from an HOA paid me $2,000 to remove some battery setup from a house, in and out in 20 minutes. Sarah had recorded the conversation on her phone. It wasn't admissible in court without Randy's knowledge that he was being recorded, but it gave us the information we needed. We knew who did it and approximately when. Robert immediately contacted the police and provided them with the email evidence and the information about Randy Morrison. The detective assigned to the case, Detective Williams, was much more interested now that we had actual leads. They brought Randy in for questioning. Without his lawyer present, because Randy thought he was smarter than he actually was, Randy admitted everything. He said Brenda Patterson had paid him $2,000 in cash to remove the battery bank from my generator. She had told him it was HOA property that had been installed without permission, and she needed it removed. Randy claimed he didn't know it was theft. Whether that was true or not didn't matter. He had removed property from my land without my permission, causing tens of thousands of dollars in damage. That was textbook felony theft and vandalism. Detective Williams arrested Randy Morrison that same day. 24 hours later, they arrested Brenda Patterson at her home on charges of conspiracy to commit theft, vandalism, and fraud. The neighborhood went insane. People were taking sides. Some homeowners thought I was overreacting and destroying the community over a simple dispute. Others were horrified that the HOA president had actually committed crimes against a homeowner. The local news picked up the story, and suddenly reporters were calling me for interviews. I declined all media requests on Robert's advice. "Let the facts speak for themselves," he said. "Don't turn this into a circus." The HOA board held an emergency meeting and voted to remove Brenda as president. Sharon Winters and Douglas Hamilton also resigned after Robert indicated that their emails showed knowledge of Brenda's intentions and failure to stop her, which could make them accessories. A new interim board was appointed, led by a reasonable guy named Peter Sullivan. Peter had always been friendly and had actually complimented my generator installation when he saw it. One of his first acts was to formally approve my generator installation retroactively and withdraw the HOA's lawsuit against me. That should have been the end of it, but of course it wasn't. Brenda hired a lawyer, a sleazy guy named Martin Pierce, who specialized in getting white-collar criminals off on technicalities. Pierce argued that Brenda had been acting in her capacity as HOA president, and therefore had qualified immunity. He also argued that the emails were taken out of context, and that Brenda had simply been arranging for what she believed was legitimate HOA business. The prosecutor wasn't buying it. The case went to a preliminary hearing in March, and the judge found sufficient evidence to proceed to trial. Brenda was released on a $10,000 bond with the condition that she have no contact with me or my family. She violated that order almost immediately. One evening in late March, Jennifer and Emma were at the grocery store. Jennifer called me, her voice shaking. "Brenda's here." She just cornered me in the produce section and started screaming at me. "She called you a liar and said we're destroying her life. Get away from her and call the police. I'm on my way." I drove to the Major on Alpine Avenue going probably 20 miles over the speed limit. By the time I got there, store security had separated Brenda and Jennifer, and the police were already there. Brenda was still shouting, her face red, completely unhinged. "You people are ruining everything. That generator is illegal and you know it. I was protecting the community." Officer Martinez, the same cop who had taken my initial report, was trying to calm her down. "Madam, you need to stop talking. You're violating your bond conditions." "I don't care. This is harassment. He's the criminal, not me." They arrested her again, this time for violation of a no-contact order. The judge revoked her bond and remanded her to custody until trial. Emma was traumatized by the incident. She had nightmares for weeks. Jennifer wanted to move out of the neighborhood immediately, but I convinced her to wait until everything was resolved. We didn't want to let Brenda's actions force us out of our home. The trial was scheduled for June. In the meantime, my insurance finally paid out the claim, minus the deductible. Tom and his crew installed a new battery bank and repaired the damaged components. The system was up and running by April, just in time for spring storm season. Robert filed a civil suit against Brenda personally and against the HOA for the full amount of damages, including the insurance deductible, lost work time, legal fees, emotional distress, and punitive damages. We were seeking $500,000. The new HOA board wanted to settle. Peter Sullivan came to my house personally to apologize. "What Brenda did was inexcusable," he said. "The board authorized me to offer a settlement. We'll pay your legal fees, your deductible, and $50,000 for your trouble. In exchange, you drop the suit against the HOA." "What about Brenda? We can't speak for her, but the HOA's insurance is willing to pay that amount to make this go away. Brenda's going to have to deal with her own consequences." I talked it over with Jennifer and Robert. The offer was fair. The HOA itself hadn't committed the crime, just Brenda. And Peter and the new board were trying to do the right thing. We accepted the settlement in early May. The HOA paid out $120,000 total, covering all my costs plus compensation for the nightmare we had been through. It was more than fair. Brenda's criminal trial started on June 15th. The prosecution had a mountain of evidence. The emails, Randy Morrison's testimony in exchange for a reduced sentence, the documentation of my legitimate installation approval, and the financial records showing suspicious cash withdrawals from Brenda's personal account matching the timing of the theft. Her lawyer tried to argue that she had been trying to protect property values and had made an error in judgment, not committed a crime. The jury didn't buy it. After 3 days of testimony and only 4 hours of deliberation, they found her guilty on all counts. The sentencing hearing was in July. The judge was not sympathetic. Brenda had shown no remorse, had violated her bond conditions, and had terrorized my family at a grocery store. The judge sentenced her to 3 years in prison, with eligibility for parole after 18 months, plus 5 years probation, and full restitution for all damages not covered by the HOA settlement. Randy Morrison got 18 months and probation for his cooperation. Standing in that courtroom, watching Brenda being led away in handcuffs, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief that it was over, anger at what she had put us through, and sadness that it had come to this at all. If she had just followed the law and her own HOA's bylaws, none of this would have happened. Life slowly returned to normal after that. Emma stopped having nightmares. Jennifer and I decided to stay in the house. Most of the neighbors were supportive, and the few who still sided with Brenda were at least quiet about it. Peter Sullivan did a good job as HOA president, and he made it clear that homeowners' rights would be respected going forward. The generator performed flawlessly. We had 2 power outages that summer during severe thunderstorms, and both times the system kicked in seamlessly. My clients never experienced a single interruption in service. That $70,000 investment proved its worth. In August, I got a letter from Brenda's lawyer. She was trying to appeal the conviction, claiming ineffective counsel and arguing that the evidence had been improperly obtained. Robert said it was a long shot and probably wouldn't go anywhere. He was right. The appeals court rejected her petition in October. Brenda would serve her time. I ran into Sharon Winters at a neighborhood block party in September. She approached me nervously, clearly wanting to say something. "Kyle, I just wanted to apologize. I should have stopped Brenda. I knew she was out of control, but I didn't think she would actually break the law. I'm sorry for what you and your family went through." I appreciated the apology, even if it came too late to prevent the damage. "Thank you. I accept your apology. For what it's worth, your generator is actually really nice. You can barely see it, and knowing it kept working when the power went out during that storm in July, I'm thinking about getting one myself." Life has a funny way of coming full circle sometimes. By the time October rolled around, everything felt settled. The legal battles were over. The generator was working perfectly. Emma was doing well in school. Jennifer had gotten a promotion at work. We were finally able to relax and enjoy our home without constantly looking over our shoulders. I learned a lot from the whole experience. I learned that HOAs can be forces for good or evil depending on who's running them. I learned that documentation is everything when you're dealing with bureaucracy. I learned that standing up for yourself matters, even when it's difficult and expensive and stressful. Most importantly, I learned that our legal system, for all its flaws, does eventually work if you have the evidence and the patience to see things through. Brenda Patterson thought she could abuse her power as HOA president to push around a homeowner who wasn't doing anything wrong. She thought she was above the law. She was wrong. On a cold December evening, almost a year after the battery bank was stolen, I was in my garage doing some maintenance on the generator. It was running its weekly self-test, purring smoothly, the battery bank fully charged and ready to provide backup power if needed. Tom had been right about winter being the critical time for these systems. We had already had 3 significant snowstorms, and the power had flickered several times. Jennifer came out to the garage with 2 mugs of hot chocolate. She handed one to me and leaned against the workbench. "You ever regret fighting this so hard?" she asked. "All the stress and legal fees and everything." I thought about it for a moment. No. If I had just let her bully me into removing a legally installed generator that I needed for work, what would that have said? That people like Brenda can get away with whatever they want as long as they're in a position of authority. That homeowners have no rights. I know. You're right. It's just been such a hard year. It has, but it's over now, and we're still here in the house we love in a neighborhood that's actually pretty great now that the leadership changed. We won, Jen. She smiled and clinked her mug against mine. We did win, didn't we? That night, after Jennifer and Emma had gone to bed, I sat in my home office and looked at the file cabinet where I kept all the documentation from the case. Hundreds of pages of emails, letters, legal filings, photographs, and reports. The whole story of how a simple backup generator installation turned into a year-long legal battle that ended with criminal convictions. I thought about writing it all down, maybe posting it online somewhere. Other homeowners needed to know that they had rights, that HOAs couldn't just do whatever they wanted, and that sometimes you have to fight back even when it seems impossible. But that could wait. For now, I was just grateful to be done with it. The generator hummed quietly outside, doing its job, keeping us safe and prepared for whatever Michigan weather could throw at us. The battery bank sat securely in its weatherproof enclosure, exactly where it belonged, protected by law and by the lessons we had all learned about the limits of HOA power. 3 years later, I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that Brenda had been released on parole after serving 18 months. She had moved to Florida to live with her sister, far away from Pleasant Valley estates and the community she had tried so hard to control. I never saw her again, and that was fine with me. The generator is still running perfectly. Tom comes out twice a year for maintenance, and every time he sees it, he shakes his head in amazement at how close we came to losing the whole system because of one person's abuse of power. Peter Sullivan served 2 terms as HOA president, and then stepped down to let someone else take over. Under his leadership, the HOA revised its bylaws to include specific timelines for architectural approvals, mandatory training for board members on property rights and state law, and a clear appeals process for homeowners who disagreed with board decisions. Other HOAs in the area heard about what happened and started implementing similar reforms. Our case became something of a cautionary tale in HOA management circles, an example of what can go wrong when board members forget they're servants of the community, not rulers of it. Emma graduated from high school this past spring and is heading to Michigan State in the fall. She wants to study law, partly inspired by watching how the legal system worked during our case. She says she wants to help people who are being pushed around by those in power. I couldn't be more proud. Jennifer and I are still in the same house, and we've never regretted staying. The neighborhood is our home, and we weren't going to let one bad actor drive us away from it. The generator sits in its enclosure, a quiet reminder that sometimes the most important thing you can do is stand up for yourself, document everything, and trust that the truth will eventually win out. On winter nights when the wind howls and the power flickers, I hear the generator automatically kick in, seamlessly providing power to our house. The battery bank charges and discharges as designed, extending our runtime and protecting sensitive electronics. The whole system works exactly as it's supposed to, exactly as it was designed to work, exactly as I had planned when I first decided to install it. And every time it runs, I think about that January morning when I found the battery bank missing and my whole world turned upside down. I think about the anger, the fear, the uncertainty of not knowing if I would ever get justice or if Brenda would get away with it. I think about the long legal battle and the toll it took on my family. But mostly, I think about how it all worked out in the end. How the system, despite its flaws and delays and complications, eventually delivered justice. How standing up to a bully, even when that bully holds institutional power, is worth the fight. How documentation and evidence and persistence can overcome corruption and abuse. The generator continues to hum outside, a $60,000 machine that sparked a $500,000 legal battle and sent an HOA president to prison. It keeps our lights on during storms and our network running when my clients need support. It does its job quietly and efficiently, asking nothing in return except occasional maintenance and respect for how it's supposed to be used, just like homeowners in an HOA, really. We pay our fees, we maintain our properties, we follow reasonable rules. All we ask in return is that those rules be applied fairly and that our legal rights be respected. It's not a complicated equation. But as I learned the hard way, some people in positions of power forget these basic principles. Pleasant Valley Estates is a better place now than it was 4 years ago. The rules are clearer, The board is more responsive, and homeowners feel like they have a voice. That's Brenda's real legacy, though not the one she intended. Her criminal abuse of power led to reforms that protect everyone. Sometimes I wonder if she understands that. If she's down in Florida thinking about what she did and whether it was worth it. If she regrets not just following the law and letting me keep my legally installed generator. If she realizes that her need for control and her disregard for homeowner rights led directly to her own imprisonment and the dismantling of everything she thought she had built. I doubt it. People like Brenda rarely accept responsibility for their actions. They always think they're the victim, that the world treated them unfairly, that they were justified in whatever they did. Even now, she probably thinks I'm the villain in this story, the troublemaker who wouldn't just comply with her demands. But I know the truth. The courts knew the truth. The jury knew the truth. And most importantly, my family knows the truth. We stood up to corruption and we won. Our generator sits outside as a monument to that victory, generating power and peace of mind in equal measure. The battery bank that was stolen that January night was eventually recovered, in a way. The insurance payout and the HOA settlement meant we came out ahead financially. The new batteries are even better than the original ones, with improved capacity and efficiency. Randy Morrison's testimony helped police bust a ring of people stealing copper and electronics from construction sites. Some good came from all of it. As I finish writing this and prepare to share it with others who might face similar situations, my main message is simple. Know your rights, document everything, and don't be afraid to fight back against abuse of power. HOAs serve a purpose, but they're not above the law. Board members are volunteers managing a community, not dictators ruling a fiefdom. If your HOA is violating your rights, stand up. If they're ignoring their own bylaws, call them out. If they're breaking the law, report them. It won't be easy, it won't be quick, and it won't be cheap. But it's worth it, both for yourself and for everyone else in your community who might face the same abuse in the future. The generator outside my window just finished another successful self-test. The battery bank is at 100% charge. All systems are operating normally. The equipment that nearly destroyed my life has become a symbol of resilience and justice. Every time I hear it run, I'm reminded that sometimes the hardest battles are the ones most worth fighting. Pleasant Valley Estates is my home. The generator is part of my home. And both are here to stay, protected by law and by the lessons we all learned about what happens when power is abused and homeowners fight back. Brenda Patterson tried to take something from me that I had every right to have. Instead, she lost everything. That's not revenge. That's just the natural consequence of breaking the law and thinking you're above accountability. Justice delayed is justice denied, they say, but in this case, justice was simply thorough. Every question was answered, every piece of evidence was examined, every legal avenue was explored. And in the end, the truth prevailed. That's all anyone can ask for.